My name is Kent Potriff. I'm the Community Emergency Management Coordinator for the County of Brant. And I'll be your MC for tonight's public information meeting on legacy gas wells. We have approximately 233 legacy gas wells in the County of Brant. And these gas wells are often no longer in use, and they've been abandoned years ago. And they may not be compliant with today's standards and safety and environmental standards. So some of these wells may not be visible above ground, leaving landowners unaware of their presence. So during the Ministry of Natural Resources presentation this evening, you will learn of the history of these gas wells, the legislation governing them, and how they can pose a risk to the environment and to human health. You'll also learn about the provincial resources available to landowners to assist them in making their wells safe. Our local public health unit is with us tonight, and they will speak about the health impacts of exposure to hydrogen sulfide gas and methane gases. The County of Brant will be presenting to you tonight in regards to their response, the municipal response to a legacy gas well incident should one occur in our community. So before commencing our presentations tonight, I'd like to advise everyone that this presentation is being recorded, and it will be placed on the County of Brant's Gas and Oil's webpage on our website. And that way, for those that can't attend tonight, or if you'd like to refer back to the presentations will be on the website. Located on your table, there are some pens, and there's some question and answer cards there, and also some pads. If you have a question, there will be time at the end of each presentation for you can go up to the podium there. There's a microphone, you can ask the question, or you can write your question down on the comment card there, and if you just hold it up, then we'll have somebody come around, collect that from you, and they will ask the question on your behalf. We just ask that because this is being recorded, that you don't identify yourself, your name or your address. That way we don't have to edit that out later, and we can answer your question anonymously for you. So it is my pleasure at this time to call up Nicole Michalchuk. She's our Senior Program Advisor, Strategic Petroleum Initiative Section of the Ministry of Natural Resources, and she'll be presenting to you this evening on behalf of the Ministry of Natural Resources. So, Nicole.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. So, as Ken said, I'm Nicole Michalchuk. I'm the Senior Program Advisor with the Ministry of Natural Resources. I'd first like to thank all of you for joining us tonight, and thank the County of Brant team for inviting us. It's been a really great experience working with Kent and the whole team. So tonight we'd like to share some information with you around old and inactive oil and gas wells. So we'll be talking about the petroleum industry in Ontario, the ministry's role in oil and gas, how to identify a well, the public and environmental safety, responsibilities of landowners and provincial provincial supports, and the ministry's legacy oil and gas wells action plan. So following tonight's session, we'll have a bit of a Q&A session, and you are able to ask any of your questions in a public forum, and then me and my colleagues here at the table can try our best to answer them. We also welcome any of you to approach us after the event if you want to chat one-on-one. So diving right into the history of petroleum industry gives you a sense of where old and inactive gas wells on the landscape come from. So oil was originally discovered in Lambton County in 1858, and that led to a rapid development of wells throughout the area. So production of both gas and oil wells, they continued along south and along an extensive zone to the north of Lake Erie, and then east to the Niagara Peninsula. Currently, the ministry has records for over 27,000 known wells. However, there are potentially many more unknown wells that are on the landscape that we don't have records for. So wells can either be active or inactive. So there are more than 3,400 active wells, oil and gas wells in Ontario. So active wells are those that are currently in operation and they're either producing oil, gas, or salt. However, most gas and oil wells on the landscape are considered inactive old wells, sometimes referred to as legacy wells, which you guys have all seen for tonight's promotion. So these aging wells were drilled and decommissioned decades ago, or they could be drilled and decommissioned decades ago when plugging practices were perhaps not as well developed and record keeping at that time was extremely limited and more they were developed in a time previous to like really effective management regulations. So petroleum wells in southwestern Ontario. So most of the province's oil and gas wells are located in southwestern Ontario, as you can see on the map here. So it shows that the majority of the wells, which are gray, are inactive old wells. And so that means that these wells do not have a license holder, leasee, or other viable operator, which means responsibility for the wells falls to the landowner. The black represents the approximately 3,400 active wells on the landscape. So our records show that Brant County, there are about 269 well records for Brant County. 10 of these wells are active wells, so they are commercially producing wells. 123 are inactive wells, and we have about over 100 well records that have missing information within the well record as to the status of the well. So what is Ministry's role, the Ministry of Natural Resources role, and why are we here talking to you today? So the Ministry oversees Ontario's petroleum industry and old well infrastructure by providing expert advice to the province, municipalities, Indigenous communities, and industry, regulating the exploration, production of oil and natural gas under the Oil, Gas, Salt Resources Act, it's quite a mouthful, including issuing licensing and permits and approvals for wells. Developing and enforcing standards and policies to ensure that gas and oil wells are developed and decommissioned safely according to Ontario guidelines, administering the Abandoned Works program, and that program funds the plugging of oil and gas wells that pose a threat to public and environmental safety. And to date, over 450 wells have been plugged under this program. And working collaboratively with our municipal partners to provide support related to gas and oil well emergency planning, preparedness, and response. So identifying a well. So how do you know if there's a well on your property? So there are actually multiple ways. So if you're unsure if you have a petroleum well on your property, you can do a simple search on our online database to find out if there's a well record on or nearby. So visit ontario.ca/gas and oil wells and search the petroleum well map. So once you're at the map, you can do a further search, you can put in your specific address, and you can find if there's a well record in the provincial database. So it's important to note that a well record may not exist, but there could still be an undocumented well on your property. So after the presentations, you can go to one of the laptop stations and look up your address in the petroleum well map database to see if there's a well record there. And we have printouts that will walk you through the process of searching and how to read some of the important pieces of a well record. The County of Brant and Ministry staff will be available to help you at the computers if you want. I'm going to call on Catherine to come deliver the next few slides.
Oil and gas wells may pose a threat to public safety and the environment if they're not properly plugged. Also, below ground conditions can degrade plugging material and allow the wells to be a pathway for gas to migrate to the surface. So it's important that aging wells are maintained and properly plugged, especially when they're not in use. Well, if you're wondering what the signs of a leaking well may include, you can have soil staining, so black stains, or as the picture there indicates, discoloration of grass on your property, vegetation depth. There might be some depression or sinking, some subsidence of the ground above a well. Or you might see pooling of water or fluid that's migrated to surface, the presence of bubbles of gas migrating up. Or you might smell, not all gases associated with these wells have a smell, but hydrogen sulfide at certain concentrations, you've likely encountered that rotten egg smell before.
So I'm just going to go back just to finish up other ways that you might search for a well. So as we mentioned, you can search using GeoHub, the Ontario database for well records. And like we said, we can help you out later after the session if you want to take a look at the laptops there and follow the prompts that are on this postcard. And if you have questions for ministry staff, we can help you do a search there. You can also search for a well record, more extensive well records, or if you already know that you have a well on your property and you want to find out more information, you can actually go to the online Oil, Gas, and Salt Resources Library. And so the library is a not-for-profit resource center for members of the public, researchers, and industry, and it operates separately from the ministry. So landowners can access information from the library about wells on the property anonymously if they wish. A link to the library can be found on our website at ontario.ca/gas and oil wells. Another way to check if there is a well on your property is to do a physical search. So old and inactive wells have often been buried over time and may not even be visible at surface, as Kent mentioned earlier. When doing a search, you can look for the following things: debris piles, old foundations, old tanks, buried pipes, a lot of wood piles or clay tiles and pipes used for well casings. All of these might indicate that a well might be nearby. Covers that may conceal a well, so look for well covers. And then, as Catherine had mentioned, areas of dead or discolored vegetation or slumpage of soil that may indicate a leakage of liquids or gas that have come through the surface. So if you suspect that there might be a petroleum well on your property that you weren't aware of, it's best to stay a safe distance from it, as it may be hazards present. You can also contact the ministry and we can help you do a verification as to whether it's a gas or oil well. There may be multiple old and inactive gas wells on a single property. Long-established neighbors or local community members are valuable resources of information as to where wells might be present. As well as if you can access historic aerial photos at your municipal office or local library, that might also provide some information as to what's on your property. If you're unsure whether a well exists on your property, or if an old petroleum well, whether it's something that you found as an old petroleum well or a water well, you can give us a contact at our petroleum operations section at 519-873-4634 or email us at gasandoilwells@ontario.ca, and that information is on our postcard as well that you can take home with you. So as Catherine mentioned, so public safety and the protection of Ontario's communities remains the government's #1 priority. The presence of gas and oil wells may pose a public safety and environmental risks if the wells were not properly plugged, or decommissioned, or if they were left unplugged. So many earlier oil and gas wells might have had also like inferior linings and casings. And so Catherine was nice enough to speak about how there might be gases that have moved through the subsurface, and then provided some indications as to what a leaking well might have, such as the ground is depressed, the presence of gas bubbles, or that rotten egg smell, which would indicate potentially hydrogen sulfide. So if you identify a leaking well, you should contact the Ministry of Natural Resources and report it to our spills, the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks Spills Action Center. And so we have the number there. It's 1-866-MOE-TIPS or 663-8477. If you aren't sure, please feel free to contact the ministry. If you want to provide us with pictures, we might be able to help you identify if a well is present and if it's leaking. So if you suspect hydrogen sulfide though might be leaking, you're smelling that, that sort of rotten egg smell, please avoid low-lying areas and confined spaces where toxic gases could accumulate. So if there's immediate need or an immediate concern for public health and safety, then you and all the other individuals on your property should evacuate the area and contact 911 if it's a threat. Keep in mind, if you're making changes to your property, we do suggest checking if there is a well record on or nearby your property, so you can use the petroleum well map. The link is on our webpage at ontario.ca/gas and oil wells. And again, this postcard here will help you sort of navigate your way on that petroleum well map. So areas with old and inactive wells should be avoided when contemplating any sort of construction. So building of a new outbuilding, a shed, anything like that. Because access to a well might be required in the future, and we just kind of don't want to constrain that by building on or nearby. When excavating or beginning construction, watch for signs of a well. If you see signs of a well stop working, then give the ministry a contact and we can kind of help you verify. If you aren't sure if there's a well or you need help using the well map, again, just please contact us. We're at gas and oil wells at ontario.ca or call us at 519-873-4634. And again, our contact is on this little postcard here. So landowners with an old and an active well on their property are responsible for plugging it if an active operator cannot be identified. So current Ontario standards and policies ensure that gas and oil wells are developed and decommissioned safely according to guidelines. However, as we mentioned, some of these wells are so old and maybe that they weren't plugged according to current health and safety standards. So the Abandoned Works program offered by the Ministry of Natural Resources is available to landowners to cover the costs associated with gas and oil well plugging if the well is deemed to be hazardous to the public or the environment and the eligibility requirements are met. And so more information about well plugging in the Abandoned Works program, including those eligibility criteria, you can go to our website at ontario.ca/gas and oil wells. If you have questions regarding your well or well plugging, we encourage you to contact us. And the ministry is happy to work with you on a plan for your well. So following today's presentation, county and ministry staff, as I mentioned, will be available to help you search your property on the petroleum well database to confirm if there's a well. And in that well database, you can actually tell the year a well was plugged if that had been reported. So the ministry is implementing a legacy oil and gas wells action plan with significant investments being made to identify and mitigate risks associated with old oil and gas wells. So the action plan includes undertaking multi-year research and scientific studies, expansion of eligibility and funding for the Abandoned Works program that we just chatted about, funding to assist municipalities prepare for emergencies associated with legacy oil and gas wells, and engaging with stakeholders and residents like we are today in the southwestern part of the province, where wells are particularly prevalent, to raise awareness about the presence of wells and receive input on our ministry's action plan. So if you want to provide any further input on the action plan, you can ask a question during our question period following this, or you can come talk to us one-on-one after today's session. So you can contact the ministry via email. I'll just read them out again at gasandoilwells@ontario.ca, or you can call us at 519-873-4634. To get more information on gas and oil wells, to find any of the contact information we share with you today, or links to other websites we might have mentioned, you can get all this at ontario.ca/gas and oil wells. And now we will open up the floor for any questions you have. And to help me answer, I have my colleagues from the ministry here. So I have Catherine Baker, Senior Program Advisor, Karen Gray, Petroleum Specialist, Annie Steeke, Manager of Strategic Petroleum and Initiative Section, and then Mark Emery, Manager of Carbon Storage. So if there's any questions we can't answer here, we'll be happy to get your contact information at the end of the session, and we can get back to you with a response. Otherwise, you're welcome to contact the ministry directly with the contact information provided on our handout and that I've been reading up today. And just before we begin, just to remind everybody that we're in a public forum and the protection of people's privacy is important, so just be cognizant of sharing personal information. So if your question is very site-specific, we would be happy to chat with you one-on-one following the presentation. And with that, if anybody wants to step up and ask a question, please do.
Yeah, just a quick question. According to your records, what year or years were most of these wells established in this area, specifically?
So just because in case people couldn't hear you, so for the first question as to the age of the wells sort of in the area, our petroleum specialist had mentioned that she's seen a lot of the wells being from the 1930s within this area. Some more in like the 40s, 50s, I think you were saying, but even some as early as the 1900s. And then follow-up question, yes, no.
So, and just to put in just a little bit of context, the first piece of provincial legislation that came in to effect in Ontario wasn't until about 1924. So, and that was just identifying where wells were. There were, like the standards of the day in the, say, the 20s and 30s and the 40s were a lot less than what they are. So it's probably really up to the individual driller, if there wasn't gas, that how they proceeded to plug the well based on whatever that standard was. So as I said, definitely not as strong as they are today. So it's hard to say what the condition of the plugins were like at that time.
So if they didn't find gas in the captive, did those have been recorded or not recorded? So they drilled that out and the gas pressure was such that they decided just to cap it again and abandon it. Were they still recorded even though they didn't produce? Or they just moved captive, buried it, moved on?
For sure, there would have been, like if it was in the 30s, 40s, 50s, there would have been a well record. But even then, the record keeping then wasn't as good as it is now. So if, like when Nicole mentioned, there's could be many, many more wells on the landscape that are undocumented. You know, we're talking close to 100 years ago, right? So the record keeping wasn't that great. If there happened to be a record and the ministry got it, we would have it in the database for the 27,000 well records. But I also think that was at a time where we were just transitioning to provincial legislation to govern wells that, you know, it may not have been as aggressive or well documented as.
So back in the day, if they drilled a dry hole, chances are they don't want to waste their equipment and their casings that they put in the ground, so they would pull them out right away and move on to the next site. So that's why a lot of these old dry wells, there won't be a cap, there might not be anything, like any steel in the ground. There's just a buried hole, or sometimes there's some scrap steel that's left, but sometimes they did leave casing, but a lot of the time if it's dry right away, they're going to take that out and move on, unless it gets.
To build on what Karen was saying, there was a lot of casing pulled at that time to support the war effort because of the metal. The metal was so valuable. But the other thing that happened too is that there were a lot of times there were deals made between the driller and the farmer where the well exists, not to plug it, so that there could have been a potential gas supply, not at a commercial volume level, but definitely at a personal level where it was a barn, you know, small amount of gas for the house. So there's just because a well was drilled doesn't necessarily mean it was plugged either, or properly plugged because of other things going on at the time, including say like pressures to support the war effort.
And for those that are exploring our petroleum well database, you may see like a well type be listed as oil or gas show. So these are the exploratory wells where oil and gas is found but determined to be unproductive. So you will see well records that are labeled in this way, or a dry hole, for example, where it was exploratory. exploratory well, and no, desired resource was found. So, for those that are, wanting to dive into the laptops there, you'll see sort of what you were talking about on there and some of the well records.
Yeah, just wanted to ask a couple of questions similar to what this gentleman was asking. Do we know the earliest date in Brant County for oil and gas wells? Do you have any document?
I can quickly go look, but I do think, so when it gets before 1900s, we don't have exact dates, it's just a general time frame. But I did see something that was late 1800s. Yeah, but that, there might only be a couple of those. But yeah, like early 1900s.
Okay, fair enough. So,
Okay.
no, that's okay. I'm just trying to get an idea of undocumented wells. I heard undocumented wells are likely present in the county, but we probably don't have a number of how many there are.
Right, that's just it. The undocumented ones, we don't know. There's just an estimate, but we don't know, especially in Brant County, we wouldn't want to say.
Okay, this is primarily gas wells we're talking about, right?
Right, so Brant County has both oil and gas, or wells that have both. So especially more on the west side of the county, there is more oil, and then we see more gas here.
And what types of depths are we talking about?
A few hundred meters.
Okay, and is that pretty generalized right across the county?
There are some deeper wells, especially the ones for oil, but for gas, they're pretty consistent. But yeah, we can take a look at that as well.
Okay, are water wells an issue? Maybe short circuiting or producing gas?
Yes, we do see that water wells can be conduit for gas as well. So whether that's coming from the actual contact aquifer at the bedrock interface, or if it's the source from deeper gas wells nearby that are then able to reach the water well. It's no both ways. But,
So is that a concern in Brant County at all?
actually, I don't think we haven't encountered that as far as I know.
I think Norfolk has that issue
Right. Yeah,
towards Wheaton and stuff.
yeah, definitely. But at least since I've been in the industry, I'm not aware of any water wells that were linked. Not to say that they can't be.
Okay, so looking at one of the slides, the ministry is there to provide support to municipalities. So I guess, what kind of support can you provide Brant County in regards to planning and policy? I don't even know what our official plan says in regards to it. That's more, I guess, a county grant question.
I'll speak, yes, and so, Brent from Brant County, okay, I was gonna say, I'll speak to what Brant County is doing, but, so the province has a number of initiatives underway to support municipalities. We have a transfer payment funding program to help enhance emergency preparedness and response, and Brent has a presentation later that'll speak to how they're thinking about the funds and what actions they're taking with the funding. But we've heard loud and clear from municipalities that there's a need for additional supports around how we consider, municipalities consider growth and development, especially given with the pressures for housing in Ontario at this time, to develop around the wells, in light of incidents like Wheatley. But I will, there's standards in place for water wells, for oil and gas wells, that they not be a conduit for gas to migrate to the surface. As we talk about these older infrastructures, older wells, that isn't always the case, but I think, people are probably aware the hydrogen sulfide, sulfurous, it's naturally occurring in the rocks around here. If you, just east of here and past here, there's Mineral Springs Road, Silver Springs. So there's a long history, but the wells provide a pathway or conduit if they're not properly plugged and maintained for hydrogen sulfide and other gases to get to the surface.
Okay, sorry, so two more specific. So in our official plan, do we have anything that engages, say, someone who's developing property to check the box that oil and gas wells have been, checked for on that property? And maybe check to see if there's any short circuiting with water
Do you
wells?
know anything on that, Ken?
I'll first speak to the province through the provincial policy statement, which is high-level planning guidance that all municipalities must comply with for their official plans. Requires that municipalities in the official plans consider natural and man-made hazards, and the man-made hazards include petroleum wells. And so when I mentioned that municipalities have, voiced concerns to the province that they need additional advice on how you, what you consider, how close you can develop, what things they need to be mindful of, what instructions they need to provide to development applications. That we've heard and we're working on. But municipalities have the ability in official plans and through their bylaw making authority to put additional restrictions in areas where it's needed.
Okay, so.
Do you want to?
Just to clarify, if you'd like to leave your contact information with Ken Bonter before you leave, we'll get that question recorded. I don't think we have anybody here who can answer that question on our behalf tonight as far as the official plan.
Okay, fair enough.
So feel free to catch up with Ken and we'll get your name recorded. It's a great question. It'll probably end up as part of our presentation.
Okay, just for everybody here, before I write down that question, so I'm more interested in areas where we know there's gas fields present or oil fields, whatever, present. There's a high prevalence for undocumented wells. Just having some mechanism in our official plan that forces the developer or proponent who's developing the property to investigate further and provide evidence from qualified, like from a professional geologist or a professional engineer who's maybe a member of OPI or something like that. I'm just hoping we have those safeguards in place, just as a resident of Brant County. That's all.
Thank you.
Well, that's very good. We do geological studies now, before we do developments, so there's a good chance that could be
It's-
part of that.
Yeah, it's usually not.
Yeah.
That's why I bring it up.
Yeah, no, excellent question.
All right, any other questions?
Okay, so what's going to happen right now is in previous town halls for legacy gas wells that the province has had, they've had some questions that have been asked, so we'll ask those questions to the ministry now so that they can be have the benefit of their answers in person. And that might generate another question that you have. So I'll ask the fire chief, Darren Watson, to pose those questions now.
Thank you, Ken. So my first question is, should I be concerned if I find an old oil or gas well on my property?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Yeah, so not all wells pose a safety risk. So aging wells, aging oil and gas wells, they can become increasingly a factor in terms of risk and safety to the environment as infrastructure of the well. So for example, like the casing or what is plugged with may deteriorate over time. So properly plugged oil and gas wells, especially those done up to current standards, reduce the risk to landowners and the environment. So landowners who are aware of or discover a well on their property, we encourage you to contact the ministry. If issues are identified with the well, the province might be able to provide some advice or some supports there. However, if you do suspect that a well might be leaking, then that's when we ask you to contact the ministry as well as the Skills Action Center. The number is available on our webpage at ontario.ca/gas and oil wells.
Thank you. My second question is, how do I know if and when my well was plugged?
Yeah. So, as we mentioned, there are computers available, or you can take this card home with you, and do your own search as to your property or properties to see if there's a well record on or nearby. And so in that petroleum well map, if you do find a blue dot on or near your property and you click it and it brings up a record there, it will indicate a plugging date. So if the well was plugged and if there's a record of that particular well being plugged, there will actually be a date in that well record. The Oil and Gas Salt Resources Library that I mentioned earlier, they're a really great resource that allows landowners to view detailed records of oil and gas wells on your property. So their information is on our website as well at ontario.ca/gas and oil wells. And if you do find a well on your property and you know one exists and it doesn't exist in the database, it might be worth giving the ministry a call so that we can have a record of that and in terms of knowing further details and plugging dates, just to ensure health and safety.
Thank you. What wells qualify for provincial funding under the Abandoned Works Program?
So, like we mentioned earlier, the Abandoned Works Program is available to Ontarians to cover the costs associated with well plugging. And these are eligible wells that are a hazard to the public or the environment. So requirements of the Abandoned Works Program have recently been updated. And so any gas or oil well would qualify if you have the following conditions. An active operator cannot be identified for the well, other than the landowner. And the landowner has not used or benefited from or intentionally tampered with the well. So more information about eligibility is available on our website at ontario.ca/gas and oil wells. And you guys are gonna get sick of me saying that same URL.
Thank you. How is a well plugged?
So wells are plugged using cement by a plugging contractor. In most cases, a plugging contractor will use equipment such as a service rig, steel tanks to hold fluids during plugging, tanker trucks, and construction equipment. It's really important that plugging is done by a qualified professional that is specific to oil and gas. So there is a lot of like geological knowledge that is required to ensure that the well is plugged at the right depth, particular to the depth of that well and where it is within the geology of that property.
Thanks. The last question I have right now, Nicole, and I believe you touched on it in your presentation, is are there concerns with building near an old well, whether it be a house, a garage, or a barn?
Yeah, so we touched on this a couple times tonight, but areas with old and inactive gas wells should just be avoided when contemplating construction. Access to the well might be required in the future. Also, we talked about it's possible that gas may travel underneath the ground and come up through man-made openings such as a well, and so it's important that that is not sort of enclosed. So before building structure, as we mentioned, check out the online database, see if there's a well record. And then even though, as we mentioned, a well record might not exist, it doesn't mean a well is not there and undocumented, right? So when excavating or beginning construction, just be really cautious and watch for signs of a well. And if you do find signs of a well or you do find some infrastructure as you're digging that you're not really sure what it is, feel free to just contact the ministry. So just to be safe, just stop construction where it is, contact the ministry, and we can do some investigating on our end.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah?
I'd just like to add a little bit of more information about our Legacy Oil and Gas Action Plan that's underway. And I think it speaks to some of the questions that you were asking about locations of wells that are unknown. So currently under our action plan, some of the key activities we're undertaking include studies to locate wells. So we're undertaking technology assessments to use technology to look at larger spans of area to detect unknown wells, to improve our database. So our database, as you can tell from our conversations, is a really important part on how we manage the issues going forward. And we want to make sure that's publicly available so homeowners and landowners and families are safe, and the environment around these issues is safe for our families in the future. So that being said, we're happy to share a little bit more about some of the projects we're undertaking. So we have a project called, it's called an urban technologies pilot. So we're really looking at using technology in higher density areas where there's other buildings and such, because that's greater risk for public safety in those areas. So what is the technology telling us about identifying wells? So one way of doing that is through gas detection. We've kind of just completed a study on that. We're analyzing the results. In addition to that, we're looking at well search technology. So we've undertaken a contract that's being kicked off right now to really look at assessing worldwide what are the latest technologies and what technologies are best suited for the Ontario situation or our Ontario context, and getting an evaluation of that. So that also provides our inspections and investigations support in terms of accessing options. But of course, all this information we would be sharing with our emergency response partners at municipalities as well. So we're trying to get ahead of some of these things, especially in terms of using technology. We've also undertaken a few studies already not studies, more information projects where we've received and we're actively always looking for. So if anybody in this community knows about any records that are paper records or cards from companies or other operators that have been in this area, we're happy to work with our Ontario Gas and Resource Library, which Nicole has referred to. They're our partners with managing our database and updating files. We can work through them to assess and actually update our records. So in the last year, for example, we've undertaken 2 projects with the library where we've received records from regional and national partners. So one of them was Union Gas, has donated, they've got stocks of cards. So we literally have the library go through all of them and check against records. We've been able to update, I think by now, about over 280, 400 now. Great, so 400 new records have now been entered since we started our action plan. And we're continuing to identify new sources. So just recently, one of our senior program advisors has also identified, I think there's some national holdings, some records were moved to a national holding, and we're trying to access those and look through those as well. So these are some of the important activities we're taking, because we do recognize that unknown factor is a huge part of the issue, right? Even if the quality of our data right now is not the greatest, we know that we can search in the area. So Nicole's talked a lot about that our records are poor. It's great that we have a record, but sometimes the locate information could be almost a kilometer away. So it's really important that we deal with this as a community and really think about our neighbors and take a look around you and check in. So when you see something close to your home, that does kind of indicate to you, if you can't find it, maybe talk to your neighbors too, because these are issues, these wells, in a lot of cases, we're not saying they're risky or at risk. A lot of things may not necessarily be, but you need to know they're there. But even on the plugging, the plugging can degrade. It doesn't mean it will, and it doesn't mean that your well on your property is going to be, again, one that needs to be plugged under the AWP. But it's just that general awareness we need to have people mindful of, so that we can. And then the other part about the data records is that this is, again, publicly available, but we also want to work with our emergency response partners. So when the database gets updated, it actually helps your municipality to know where wells are so that they can actually plan for issues as well, right? So we highly encourage people to take a look at the database, see what's there. If you think something's in your area and you see something awry, no issues contacting us. This is a really important investment that the government's committed to, that we want to help the landowners. So, the better we get our database going, it actually helps the whole system deal with this issue longer term. So you mentioned current standards for plugging the wells. I'm not sure if you mentioned when were those developed?
The current standards were developed in 2001. So just after the Oil, Gas, and Salt Resources Act was proclaimed.
Okay, and the qualified professionals who can plug, were they required to provide documentation from the landowner as well as the ministry that they had.
Yeah, that would have been an arrangement between the landowner and the operator. I'm sure they did as part of their lease agreement, whatever arrangement they had with them. But in addition, M&R would have received that information, which since the Oil, Gas and Salt Resources Act came into effect, that contractors, there's actually a plugging well report that they're required to submit to us so that we can actually get a really comprehensive view of how they plug the well based on the current provincial operating standards.
Okay, when was the act?
So the Oil, Gas and Salt Resources Act came into effect in 1997. So, as I said, when I said earlier, like the first set of provincial regulations came in 1924. There's been a series of them since then. And the one that was the legislation that predated the Oil, Gas and Salt Resources Act was the Petroleum Resources Act, and I think it was maybe 1978 when that came into effect, thereabouts, but I can't say for sure. And I think it continued to be in effect until 1997 when the Oil, Gas and Salt Resources Act.
I'm not sure whether it's real or not, but there's a perception out there that the Ministry of Environment takes a heavy-handed approach when dealing with people, and some people are very hesitant to call when they see a problem. Have you changed, or what do you have to say to alleviate some of those concerns for people that maybe don't want to call just because of the ramifications that they come up with?
Sure, so just for some clarity, the Ministry of Natural Resources is the one responsible for oil and gas wells. Did you mean the Ministry of the Environment, which would deal with, something like water wells, or do you mean natural resources? Either or? Yeah, okay. I would just say, I don't know how things have been in the past. I think certainly the ministry really wants to work with landowners just to ensure public safety, to ensure that, people are made aware of what infrastructure might exist within their property to keep them and their families safe. So that's the number one priority. So please contact us. Yeah, I would just say if you're not sure of what's on your property, if you suspect something might be there, if you know something might be there, and you don't have a firm handle on, that it was plugged to current standards and you're just not sure, that's where we can come in and provide more information. Or you can go to the library, like you mentioned, and get a little bit more information in terms of the record information that might be available for that well. And again, they're a separate entity from the ministry, so if the comfort is there, you can go to the library certainly. But we would just be happy just to work with you and just figure out, what might be on your property and what are some options moving forward.
I just want to reiterate the investment under the Legacy Oil and Gas Wells Action Plan. A huge component of that strategy is to do engagements like this, to bring that awareness to the public and open up those communication pathways. Government legislation, none of that is, fixed. It really depends on meeting the needs of the day, and that's what my team has been asked to do, is to look at the situation, increase understanding, increase scientific information and sharing that so that we can figure out the path forward. So that is one way of doing that. The other thing that we're trying to do, and we welcome input from you, and that's why we're here today too, is to collect input and feedback on what you would like to see the government do and how we should engage on these, is if you can identify trusted partners that you'd like to have messaging through and a communication pathway through. So for example, in Leamington, that's farming communities, for example, where we're trying to work through the Ontario Federation of Agriculture to make sure that at least information is out there from a trusted source that's separate from the government, where you can really figure out, the idea is not to obscure information or hide, we just want everybody to know, the information to make the best decisions for their property, for their families, and for the environment. So feel free to contact us, and we will advise along the way, but the real thing is identifying public and safety. public environmental safety.
It's fully covered, yes. Yeah, so you can check out ontario.ca/gas and oil wells, and they have the eligibility criteria. If you're not sure if you qualify, or you want to hear more about it, please contact the ministry, and we'll be happy to talk you through the program.
I've got another question. I have a map I received, came from the oil, gas, and salt library. I received it when I purchased one of my properties. And it's got more wells showing than your database currently has. Why are some wells missing?
So I was just at the library today. So it's my understanding that we have the same information. So I think the databases should be linked up. I think there was a time when they weren't. I think if you look like today, it's my understanding that they're linked up, but let me pass it over to Karen.
I'll show you my map, one-on-one, and show you how
Yeah, you got it.
the locations on that map do not match the locations entirely on your map.
Oh, even now, even today, if you looked at both?
Correct, yeah.
Okay,
So I printed them out, so I'll show them to you.
okay, yeah, we can take a look at that. So sometimes, especially the last couple of years, we've been really looking at our data a bit more closely and trying to get better locations for some of the wells. And so if you had looked maybe last year compared to now, some have moved their locations, so they might not be showing up anymore. Or would realize, oh, there's actually duplicate records, so we can remove one. But if they're still both, if you look today and it's showing that discrepancy, then I'd like to see that.
Okay, well, I will turn it back over to you, Ken. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole, for your presentation, and to the entire Ministry of Natural Resources team for all the information you provided and to the great questions that were posed to the team. It's great to hear the answers and some of your concerns as a result of the presentation. So we'll just take about 5 minutes if someone needs a washroom break. We're just out in the lobby here, and there are some goodies here on the table there, and there's coffee and water as well. So we'll just come back in 5 minutes, and we'll get started with the ministry or the medical officer of health from Grand Erie Public Health will do a presentation. On our medical officer of health from the Grand Erie Public Health, Dr. Rebecca Conley. She's going to provide you with some information about the health impacts of hydrogen sulfide gas and methane gas. So, Dr. Conley.
Thanks, Kent, and thanks for inviting us to be part of this presentation. One of our key messages we want to is to provide information to the public, and so opportunities like this are really great for us. I also want to let you know that we have a table at the back. Keith Corey, the manager of environmental health, has joined me today, so if you have any specific questions, we're happy to hear them, or if you want to come talk to us about that after the presentation, we're happy to talk to you there as well. Good. So I really have two key points I want to make here. First, I just want to talk a little bit more specifically about hydrogen sulfide. Again, just to increase awareness about the impact and the risks around that gas. And the second, I want to touch a little bit on public health's role in this domain. What happens? How do we get involved if there is concern around hydrogen sulfide in particular? I'm going to go through a little bit of a preamble, but I'll keep this really brief. The main point I want to make here is what's our mandate as public health, and we're really governed by the Health Protection and Promotion Act. And I like to boil it down to 3 P's: the protection part, the prevention part, and the promotion part. And I think hydrogen sulfide, or this domain, kind of impacts all 3. In particular, protection, we really do want to make sure we're involved in protecting the public against a health hazard, and that can be hydrogen sulfide. And also the prevention and promotion piece, we really want to make sure that people are aware of this risk so we can prevent any adverse events resulting from an environmental exposure. This talks a little bit about some of the things we get involved in. One particular is sanitation, clean water, and also around keeping people safe and making them aware of environmental hazards. So that's why I said this is really great, because we really do want to get the message out about the risks around the health risks that can be associated with gas wells, and in particular hydrogen sulfide. As you know, these chemicals can end up contaminating groundwater, soil, and in particular can affect air quality, and that's the most important piece from a health perspective. There can be a gamut of health effects. They tend to be short-term exposures. It's the most important. A low-level exposure can cause health risks, and the real catastrophic effects can be at higher exposures, which are most often in a contained space. So as I mentioned, naturally occurring hydrogen sulfide, it's produced by geothermal vents and a decomposition of material that has sulfur in it. So it's naturally occurring. It's not just through these particular wells, but the main toxicity occurs through breathing it in, as I mentioned. A lot of people ask, what about water? What if I have hydrogen sulfide in my well? Well, often oral ingestion, if you drink it, it can cause some side effects, but it's so unpalatable often, you're not going to drink enough to cause adverse health effects. And so there's a bit of a protective effect. And also, when we do ingest some hydrogen sulfide at low levels, the body's able to break it down. So it comes to the main issue around this is breathing it in, and we all know, as we've talked about, that the rotten egg smell is a real good warning sign that hydrogen sulfide is in the atmosphere. And here's some numbers, but you usually would get, your body can detect the hydrogen sulfide, that rotten egg smell, at below 1 part per million. So quite below the low level adverse events occurring. But there's a real asterisk here because our noses can't detect the concentration, can't tell us how much hydrogen sulfide is in the air. So we have to be very careful about saying, I can smell it, therefore it's X or Y. It doesn't give us that kind of information. And in fact, at higher levels of concentration, our nose loses the ability to smell it. So we have to be careful about how much we put on the smell. Just from an occupational perspective, people may ask, how much can a worker be exposed to hydrogen sulfide in the job environment? And in Ontario, 10 parts per million over 8 hours is the time-weighted average. So you're looking at those low levels. That's the marker where occupational exposure limits are set. So we can walk through this quickly, but certainly the low levels, and again, this is acute exposure, short-term exposure. You can get eyes, nose, throat irritation, and people who are predisposed to lung problems like COPD or asthma may have some breathing difficulties. And then as we climb, you can get some neurologic effects like memory, balance issues. And these high-level exposures tend to be in contained spaces like wells or enclosed buildings where there's an ongoing source of hydrogen sulfide. And these are catastrophic. So death can occur within minutes after 1 to 2 breaths because of the toxicity of hydrogen sulfide. So this is, if I could take any point home, I would say this would be the one I would reinforce. Anyone who's concerned about a hydrogen sulfide source into the well or contained space on their property, that is a very dangerous situation and should always be calling in to get support for that and alerting even fire if there's a concern of a high level exposure. So I really want to reinforce that point. Methane gas, I'm not going to talk a whole lot about methane gas. I think the money's in the hydrogen sulfide talk, but certainly it's not as toxic in smaller amounts, but it can cause some secondary health effects if it's at higher concentrations, and it can be a secondary byproduct of the gas, the wells, sorry. So that summarizes some of the key health impacts, and as I mentioned, typically short-term is the thing we're worried about. People sometimes ask too, what's the long-term effect of hydrogen sulfide? Is there any concern about that? And typically, low levels of hydrogen sulfide, there's not a lot of great evidence about what that does. There's no good evidence, for example, that it causes cancer. But again, the evidence for short-term is much more definitive. So there's still some question marks, I would say, about any concerns around long-term exposure. So the next thing I just want to talk about is, what's our role? When do we get involved? Often we are called in, for example, after a spill is triggered, and we can be involved in helping to determine whether or not there's a risk to the public health. And we may be involved in determining what kind of air sampling may be required and to confirm that there's no public health risk. The second thing we often are involved in is communicating health risks, such as this situation. We also like to provide information for people who have wells to have an understanding of what they should do should they have hydrogen sulfide smell in their water, for example. So that's an education piece is a big part of our role. We also rely on our ministry partners a lot, Ministry of Health, Public Health Ontario, when we want to get expert technical support around environmental health hazards in our community. So we often will relay and get some real expert opinions if we feel we need it. I would have to say certainly in the past, it's certainly been a real collaboration with the community partners, and we provide a role and a specific expertise around that public health piece that we hope is helpful to protect against the environmental hazard exposure. We do have some resources on our website about hydrogen sulfide and other environmental concerns, so feel free to check that out. And also, we also have some information, contact information there that may be helpful for you. I'm opening it up to questions if anyone has comments, questions that they'd like to talk to me about, or again, if you have anything you would like to talk to us about the back, feel free to come by. Thanks.
If somebody suspects hydrogen sulfide, how do they go about testing or figuring out how much or what levels they are at? Is that a county question or is that your department?
Are you talking about water or are you talking in your what?
In your, let's say you think you have a well, like a gas well in your area and you smell gas, how do you get the levels to know how dangerous that level is?
It's typically triggered, and again, the county can jump in here through, or MECP, it's triggered through the spills center, and then we would be called in if that assessment is done usually through the MECP. Does anyone want to add anything there?
So if you thought there was a well on your property and you smelled that raw egg smell, then an inspector would come out, and we have the gas detection tools. So we would be able to get an idea of the concentration, and then we would be able to let the other parties know about that as well.
Thank you, Dr. Conley, for your presentation and for attending tonight to provide us with the health-related impacts of H2S gas. The next presentation that we have this evening, I'll be calling upon Deputy Fire Chief Brant who will provide you with some information about how the municipality, the County of Brant, would respond to a legacy gas well incident in our community. So, Deputy King.
Thank you, Ken. Good evening, everyone. You've heard a lot about the effects and what to watch for and the signs of leaking wells. When everything breaks down to the final straw, that's when emergency response will be activated, and we're well aware of the potential for this in our municipality, along with the ministry and their action plan supporting all municipalities involved. There's 9 essentially as part of the overall working group, and it's essentially a hazardous materials response event, and we have training to the operations level of the municipality to do these events. There's specifics around wells that we're learning a lot about ourselves. We're building capacity in our system to respond to these. I'll get into some of the projects we've started through funding. I won't beat on the hazards again, just be aware of odors, right? So if something doesn't smell right, it's probably not right. If it wasn't there yesterday and it's there today, it could be intermittent. Just be aware, right? It's no different than a smell of smoke or anything like that. If something's not right, it's probably not right. Okay? It's usually that simple. Discolored vegetation, you're out walking your dog down the side of the road or back in your bush. These wells can be anywhere. The big thing is the dangerous gases, the explosive stuff can accumulate in low-lying areas. Okay? So if you have a dug well on your property that's big enough you can get a ladder down and you let you out and fix your own stuff, you need to be very careful of what you do against a confined space, right? But you could just be going down to your basement to check your water softener and it smells funny down here, or maybe the wall's stained a funny color that doesn't make sense. Okay? Those are all triggers that probably should be investigated. Damaged casings, there's a lot of agriculture in the I have a lot of farmers own their own excavators, clean their own fence lines, dig their own foundations.
even if you think you know where the wells are, I think we've already identified that they could be. So if you hit something, don't just bury it, especially if you smell something or see something. Let's get it recorded, let's find out what it is. The ministry is here, we're all here to help and be part of success at the end of the day. We do not want to come with fire trucks and ambulances and police officers. That's not what we want to do, right? So, if you find something, say something, and if it's not right, if you don't think it's right, you're probably very accurate. As part of the action plan, the 9 municipalities that are working, spent a lot of time with Catherine and her team, so they've, some of that funding is for capacity building and emergency response. So it's not even just fire, it's paramedics, it's emergency preparedness in municipalities. We've talked a lot about gas. All of our frontline trucks carry gas detectors now, but we have enhanced capacity. We can now remote sample from up to 150 feet away from the units you see on the screen. The little part down at the bottom is the actual gas detector. And those two units can be put together. We could use them to monitor evacuation zones. Like we plan for the worst and hope for the best. That's what first responders do. So this equipment would be a great asset for, like I say, evacuation zones, monitoring confined space. They store data that can be downloaded. It's all recorded. I won't get into all the technical stuff, but again, that's one of the units we've used. Our GIS department here in the municipality, they use drones now for their work. We expanded that capacity with another drone. It has a laser detector on it that will find methane, and it works from like 200 feet up with great accuracy. We were able to fly it to the neighboring municipality who hasn't known the issue with the leaking well, and you're able to see some real-time information, see how it really works. And gas detection is obviously a big part of response, and there's a lot of work being done. There's some working groups coming up hopefully this summer where those of us that have added capacity in gas detection will really meet with ministry and their experts and really tie together what do these readings mean, how do we track it, where's it going, what's bad, what's good, you know, how many people do we need to wake up type of thing, okay? The fundings, we've completed 2 years of funding on our base funding. There's another year going through right now. That particular project we're looking at this year will be enhancements to the facility we're in tonight to make it a reception center. So as I mentioned about evacuation zones and so on, this is where we bring our residents, keep them safe. So we're going to look at adding some backup generators, get the planning part done, get some tools in place. So it's just preparedness. There's a lot of it. So we have another facility on the west side of the municipality, so this is a great adding capacity to handle events. Some digital road signs are in there. Again, we can put them where we need. You know, if you're leaving this area, direct people where to go, addresses, what the hazard is. Maybe we just need to close extra roads. They're part of our evacuation zones, directing people. They're pretty multi-use type pieces of equipment. We're not reinventing everything. We're just increasing capacity so we can handle larger events in a better, faster way. I guess you have the top there. So the 9 municipalities, this is where it's been exciting. The ministry is doing all this high-end work and dealing with people. We actually have 9 municipalities working together. We're not all just doing our own thing now. We have some very large and exciting projects that are going to build standard, high-level capacity in the whole province, essentially. They're the 9 municipalities that are mostly affected. The biggest issue we get into with more on the oil side, but certain gases can affect us as well, but if a lot of residents get covered in toxic substances, we can't even transport you to a hospital because we can't contaminate all our ambulances, we can't contaminate the hospital, we're making it worse, not better. So we're looking at some large decon capabilities so we can bring those to a site, and a safe site, that could be here for that matter. If we can get people here, maybe like, okay, these people are too dirty to leave, so we can bring in extra equipment that's ready to go, and we can deal with people and get them decontaminated without essentially affecting our hospital. So, our hospital's no different than anyone else. It's over capacity, it's very busy, it doesn't have these specialized capabilities. And with all the municipalities working together, if the event get larger, we can just keep bringing in more equipment because we know everybody has the same stuff. So it's actually quite interesting to see this many people working together to cover at least the response when everything else breaks down. The next part of the collaborative funding, we're looking at triage type, mobile triage equipment in command centers. So police, paramedics, fire, they can all get together in a central spot. We can make sure we have those extra supplies to triage large groups of people. There'd be some specialized cleaning agents and so on in there to supplement our trailers for decontaminating people. So again, if I know that this municipality has this piece of equipment and we have this, let's get them both on the same site, and we're really working towards the good stuff. So, other things we're looking at in the collaborative is just doing some large scale scenario training. Let's put this stuff to the test and see how it works. The funding has been great. It's been pretty painless to work with. I can't say that for all grant funding that's out there. We're always looking for ways to find ways to fund projects in the municipality. Catherine and her team has been excellent to work with. And I'm not sure if I'm missing any. Where did Ken sneak off to? There it is. Did I catch them all, Ken? Yeah. There's a lot still in the works, but that's the main ones and stuff that we've already have in place. Like I say, municipality of County Brant, we operate at the hazardous material operations level, so that gets us involved hands-on with some of these situations. All of our staff improved over their limits, and then again, we can expand to outside agencies for more hazmat. We'll get the health unit involved, spills action has been mentioned. A lot of the contact stuff has been mentioned. I hope I don't have to tell you what our phone number is. Right? So if you got a problem, it's open 24/7, and it starts with 9, ends with 1. We will come, we will do our best to just so everybody not to be that person, but we respond to emergencies or perceived emergencies. You know, if you're buying a piece of property, we're not gonna come up to check it for a while. I just wanna be very clear on that. There's other resources available to work through that, and we can help point you in that direction. But the fire service, we're not gonna come and check. You know, hey, I'm thinking about buying this house. Can you come check the back here? That's not the business we're in. Okay, so we are on the response side, but the ministry and the supports are there. We'll just direct you in a different direction. Okay? With that, we'll open it up again to questions as far as how we would respond to one of these emergencies.
Really interesting to see this perspective from emergency services. I was quite unaware of a lot of this stuff, but it's sort of related to oil and gas, but not oil and gas wells. Between Cambridge and Paris, I think we have 8 major pipelines that run across the Grand River. What is our emergency preparedness like in case of a disaster?
So we do have one pipeline runs just to the north of us. I don't believe it's officially in our municipality. It's on the line.
I think there's one through St. George, right?
Is there?
Yeah.
Okay. I knew it was close up there with Cambridge area, so we are aware of that. Again, the capacity we're building here has other uses, and the ministry's aware of that. Nobody's oblivious to it. It's not like we can't use it for something else. So if we get into an event like that, which affects a lot of people, the same capacity can be used there. So this is good for a lot of things. The pipeline companies themselves, those are active pipelines, so we're working in a different world. It's not a legacy world. They're active pipelines, so they work very close with us. They come in and do training with us. They're very easy to get a hold of, and they are very well prepared. We're a small part of a response to something like that. As far as the fire department and emergency crews in the county. Does that make sense? Is that a good answer? Okay, again, I appreciate you coming out. I hope you've learned something tonight. I'm glad this is being recorded and we can make future reference to it.
Thank you, Deputy King, and I'd like to thank all of our presenters tonight for providing us some valuable information. awareness is key, and the information that you provided us goes a long way to making our community safer, making your property safer, and making your families or tenants, if you're a landlord, safer as well. So my closing remarks today, I'd like to thank the Ministry of Natural Resources for providing our municipality the funding that Deputy Kane had mentioned. This awareness session tonight is part of that funding, and all the equipment and the capacity building and the emergency preparedness enhancements that we've been able to do as a result of the funding is greatly appreciated, and our first responders and our community are the beneficiaries of that. So thank you very much. And we encourage all landowners who have legacy gas wells on or near their properties to take advantage of the resources that are available to you through the Ontario Abandoned Works Program. You can find additional information on the County of Brant's website, on their oil and gas wells webpage. And Nicole, I think once or twice, let you know about the additional resources that can be found on their web pages as well. There's additional resources that can be found on the tables at the back of the room, and I encourage you to go back and engage with staff and access some of those resources at the back. We've got computers set up in the back here, and if you want to explore some of the mapping that Nicole discussed, we're here to assist you. So we'll be here for about the next 30 minutes or so, and please come back and engage us. And I'd also like to thank those that assisted in planning this event tonight, and our staff that are here to make sure that this runs smoothly. Evan, with your work, and I look forward to seeing the final, product on the website, and you can review this again, these presentations again, on our website in the very near future. So, and with that, I thank you for attending this evening, and wish you safe travels to your next destination. So.